I think the biggest misconception about people that are homeless is that they've done something to create their situation, or that they're all maybe struggling with addiction. Not always. That can be an issue, but that's not always the case. That somehow they've done something to get themselves in that position, and I think a lot of us want to think that so that we can maybe not feel guilty about it or worry about it so much and become involved. There's just so many factors that play into this. People find themselves evicted from their house for various reasons, but I think we just need to look at everyone as a human being that deserves respect, and they have some problems they need to work through, and these are families in our community, and these children deserve it. Children don't ask to be homeless. They don't have addiction problems, so we need to really help the parents help the children.
If we took a moment to be honest with ourselves, you and I would probably discover that each of us has a mental picture, our own private misconception of a typical homeless person, who they are and how they became homeless. And there's certainly homeless individuals out there who would fit whatever misconception we may have. But the reality is that the river of homelessness that flows through our community is far more diverse than any stereotype we may have embraced.
My name is Christina Janine Lee, and I'm from Carson City, Nevada. I'm 25 years old. My birthday is April 23rd, 1994, so that means I turned 25 this year. I actually moved to California in 2006 when my mom and dad divorced. I've done a lot of hopping back between Santa Rosa, California and Carson City throughout my youth. My mom was a victim of domestic violence with my dad, and there was always a lot of chaos going on, and there's never a dull moment. When I turned around 16, I tried to move with my dad. Didn't work out. He's really rude and narcissistic and controlling and doesn't see anyone other than himself, so I moved back to California. And then I was around 17, already a teen mom. I had my son Victor. I didn't like the way my mother treated me verbally. She was really abusive, and when I had enough, I snapped and I put hands on her and ended up leaving. I gave my son to his grandfather for a few weeks, and that was my first real experience of homelessness at 17. To be homeless, it's some days are easier than others. It hurts me because I have 3 kids, and I didn't think outside of the box that, hey, I'm gonna be raising my kids out of a shelter, hanging out at the park all day, taking the bus everywhere. I didn't plan for this, but I love my kids unconditionally, so I don't consider myself homeless. As long as I have my kids with me, I'm at home. My daughter calls the shelter her home. She says, "Mom, are we going home?" And home is with my kids. I'm not homeless as long as I have my children with me. And it has its hard days when I feel a burden of having all the stress of getting to the appointments and getting all, like, right now it's summer, so I don't have to worry about school, but school's coming around the corner, school shopping. And I'm fortunate to have met a lot of great people where I'm staying at right now in the shelter, that they have been so amazing. Their children has a great impact on me, and I've made lifelong friends in the situation I'm in. Because without them, I'd be sitting on the curb, not knowing what I'm gonna do, not knowing if I have to go back to prostitution or just to try to get a room for my kids to sleep in. And so I'm really grateful for places like this that can help me from going back to what I don't want to do.
Volunteering with Family Promise has really changed my outlook on homelessness in our community and just the varied stories of the families. I had no idea what some of the challenges and barriers they had that they have to go through. And one night I was coming to volunteer at the shelter with my husband, and one of my students at our school walked in with his dad, and there was a bit of surprise on both of our faces. And again, it just kind of hits home for me, since these are students I see at work, and I come to my volunteer job here and run into them as well. And so I can see full circle what they are experiencing through their school day, and then when they're struggling with homelessness, where they're going to sleep and where they're going to eat that night. And we were able to help them get something to eat, get some dinner because they hadn't had anything to eat, and just help them get situated for the night.
There's not such a thing as typical homeless. And so a lot of people think of homeless and they'll think of the guy that's standing underneath the bridge with the sign. What they don't think about are families. They don't think about a mom and kids, or a mom and dad and kids, or a dad and a daughter who are also homeless in our community. They're the hidden homeless of our community. You don't see them out there, so you don't think of them. And so there's not a typical type of homeless, and there's also not a typical type of family homelessness. I would say there's only two common denominators in homelessness in our community. One is there's a loss of community. There's a loss of relationships. Either you never had them that you can lean back on, or something that you did, something that somebody else did, broke the relationships that you had that you can depend on. And the other thing that's involved is some type of childhood trauma. We will often see adults and children that are dealing with backgrounds of abuse and neglect that then result in homelessness as an adult, as well as other mental health and other issues that are involved with that.
My name is Stacy Salazar. I work at Family Promise, sister of Open Doors, 24-hour homeless shelter. I became a supervisor with Open Doors. I started off as an assistant, and then now I'm a supervisor for the afternoon shift, the busiest shift. I grew up in Wyoming, was born in Salt Lake City. I grew up in Wyoming pretty much my whole life. In 2004, December 12, 2004, my mom passed away. The landlord wouldn't rent to me, so after that I was pretty much homeless with my children and my kids' dad. We bounced back and forth, never really had a stable home. I was homeless for 14 years. 14 years is the long one, but this last time I was literally homeless with no family, no relatives to stay with. It was more of a, you gotta do something. You gotta put your big girl pants on and figure out, and as a single mom, you have to figure out what you're doing wrong and then handle what you gotta handle. I'd go 2 weeks, a month without eating to make sure my kids ate.
My name is Amy Robinson. I am the lead case manager of Open Doors Family Shelter. It's a program of Family Promise of Spokane. I have been working for Open Doors for a little over 2 years. I see myself in the journeys that these families are on. I've experienced a lot of the same adversities that these families have experienced. I was a homeless youth at one point. Which is couch surfing youth at one point. I got pregnant very young, and I was a single mom without a home at one point. So I see myself in many of these family stories, and I feel like I can kind of go on their journey to becoming stable again in their life, and I'm there for them, and I can help them kind of find their way.
No one plans to be homeless, and no one plans to end up sleeping here. This is where the hidden homeless sleep, if they're fortunate enough to be here rather than sleeping in their car. This is the sleeping area here at Family Promise Open Doors Family Shelter. Keep in mind, this is an emergency shelter, not transitional housing. And before Family Promise opened this shelter 2 years ago, many of these families had no choice but to sleep in their car, or worse. Tonight, 60 moms, dads, and kiddos will sleep on mats on this floor. Can you imagine your family sleeping on this floor in close quarters on mats alongside 50 other homeless family members? Yeah, me neither. As we filmed this in mid-2019, America is experiencing justified outrage over migrant kids and families sleeping on mats and on floors. But where's our outrage that homeless families right here in Spokane have to sleep in these conditions? Families belong in homes. Kids belong in beds. These moms, dads, and kiddos are the hidden homeless, the human flotsam in the unseen river of homelessness that flows through our community. Whose fault is this? It's your fault. It's my fault. It's our fault because we as a community have chosen to turn a blind eye to the reality of what's happening right here in our own community, to these families and to many more who remain the hidden homeless.